TCMMA podcast. We're going to give people some time to get into the chat. So while that's all being set up, let's take a look at let's talk about really what's coming up in the UFC. I mean, there's some big events. We're on like a 10 week stretch that began last week. It might be 11 or 12. I just know for the next several months, UFC is going down every Saturday night. So this Saturday, you got Jack the Joker Hermanson taking on Joe Pyfer. This is a highly anticipated fight. These are great fights when you got a guy like Hermanson who's, highly ranked, uh, one of the top contenders, not the top, but one of the top contenders in the division. And a guy like Joe Pyfer gets the opportunity to, accelerate his ranking with just one fight. So you have that. UFC 298 is just around the corner. In about 10 days from now, maybe 11. And you got Volkanovski versus Topuria. So tell me that's not going to be a great fight. And people are really looking forward to this for one, because Topuria is that good. This might be the best fight other than Max Holloway that we could possibly see. Make no mistake about it. And the other factor is you got Volkanovski coming off the KO loss to Islam Makhachev. When was the last time Volkanovski was KO'd? So will he rebound well in that fight? It remains to be seen. But, the door is open here for Topuria, because especially in that first round, Volkanovski is going to be shaking off that KO in the last fight. I mean, any fighter that's been KO'd that next round that they come in, there's definitely something in their head that leaves room for doubt. Now, if the fight starts going to the second and third round and Volkanovski gets comfortable and he gets past that KO loss in his mind, he can easily win this fight. So it's going to make for an interesting main event, UFC 298. I don't know about the rest of the card, but Volkanovski Topuria is going to be ridiculous. Please believe it. Then you got a couple UFC fight nights. You got UFC 299 right around the corner. I'm excited about this one because I was born and raised in South Florida, right down the road from Miami, where the Miami Dolphins play, Hard Rock Stadium, right? So you got UFC 299 in Miami, and it's going to be dope. I mean, it's going to be dope. That fight card is filled with great fights, and you got Sugar Sean O'Malley at the top taking on Marlon Vera. So, get in the chat room. Let me know who you think's winning that fight, along with Volkanovski Topuria. And don't worry, Khamzat's coming up, Conor McGregor's coming up, Islam Makhachev is coming up. We're getting into all that. So just relax while people get into this chat room. Then you got UFC 300 following that with few UFC fight nights. And I think we're pretty much on a roll till then. There's no breaks, man. Your boy Chris Cross is going to be busy as heck. Who is fighting in the 300 main event? I could tell you now, after looking at the card, I got to go backtrack a little bit on what I said previously. UFC 300 is a ridiculous card right now. But in order for 300 to take off, UFC 300 to take off, it's got to be capped with a heavy main event, because the rest of the card is ridiculous. I mean, you got guys like Bo Nickel on there. You got some other big fighters on there. I mean, the fights up and down the card are stacked. Stacked. But it won't mean anything if you get like a Leon Edwards, Bilal Muhammad at the top of the card. It'll ruin everything. It'll absolutely ruin everything. So let me know in the chat room, and we'll circle back. Who's winning, Volkanovski or Topuria? 299, Sugar Sean, okay, or Marlon Vera, and who you think's fighting in the UFC 300 main event. Now, there's only Khamzat left, you got Adesanya left, and you got Pereira left. If one of those three aren't on the card, and it can't be Islam, because he's not going to be ready in time. If it's not one of those three on the card, UFC 300 is going to fall apart in terms of the hype that surrounds the event. They got to have a big main event that sells this thing. There's got to be a big main event to sell this thing. So those are the next three big pay-per-view events. Of course, you got International Fight Week, where we are led to believe that Conor McGregor is fighting Michael Chandler. But McGregor went on a rant today. He's getting frustrated, right? And he should be, because he announced this fight like a month and a half ago on New Year's Eve. Said he's fighting in July against Michael Chandler, but that fight's never been made official. What's the holdup? What's going on? And sometimes with these situations with the fighters in the UFC over contracts, you don't know who's lying. Like Khamzat Chimaev came out the other day and was frustrated because he's like, I was promised a title shot, right? And when you read between the lines, you realize, okay, that means Khamzat was offered a fight like against Jared Cannonier or something like that, and he said no. So then he's pissed and frustrated. So he goes on to social media and starts saying that he was promised a title fight and this, that, and the other thing. But the UFC don't care. That's not on paper. That's by word. Word don't mean anything. Contracts and paper do. So Hamza's frustrated because, he's getting offered fights that he's definitely going to turn down. And the UFC can keep biding its time because they just got to offer you 3 fights a year. They could offer Hamza 3 fights a year and he could say no to all 3. And my man isn't fighting this year. So he's going to have to take a fight against a contender at some point in time. So you got McGregor frustrated. We don't have a 300 main event. And who in the heck knows when Khamzat Chimaev is going to fight again. And I can go on and on about that topic. You know me and the channel. We love to talk about Khamzat because we believe he's the future champion. We've been saying it for like 3 or 4 years now. And the bottom line is we're still waiting for a fight for Khamzat. And at this point, do I want to see him fight Dricus? Yes, but Dricus isn't going to fight him. Do I want to see Adesanya fight him? Yes, but Adesanya's not going to fight him. So he's left with like Jared Cannonier, maybe Paulo Costa fight again, maybe Marvin Vettori. These are the fights that, are in front of him. Bo Nickel is on the slow path. The UFC knows he's the future in 2 to 3 years from now. There's no reason to rush him. So he's fighting guys like Cody Brundage. Bo Nickel won't be big until Khamzat wins the belt and no one can, mess with him. Then you can bring up Bo Nickel and say, hey, we have a worthy contender here. So that's what the UFC knows the future in terms of what they think is going to happen. And I think the UFC knows that Khamzat is going to beat everybody, okay, pretty easily. Don't let the last couple fights against Gilbert Burns, where he had to squeeze down into 170. He's not a 170 pounder. A short notice fight against Usman that he probably really didn't want to take because that was a major risk. But he took it because the UFC had to tell him what they had to tell him at the time to get him to take the fight, and that's that it's a title eliminator, which what does that mean? Because every freaking fight is a title eliminator. Every time 2 guys fight, the loser's not fighting for the title in the next fight. So to tell Khamzat this is a title eliminator is absolutely ridiculous and he shouldn't have bought that because the bottom line is, again, every fight is a title eliminator. So who knows what's next for Khamzat, but if I'm his manager, I'm telling him right now, you got to fight somebody. You got to go in there and fight a top contender and beat him. And then you have some sway. You have some swag behind you. The fans are going to start getting behind you again because a lot of the fans left Khamzat because he didn't make weight, which is absolutely ridiculous because they're giving him a fight against Nate Diaz. And I recognize that a lot of you out there, you want to see him fight Nate Diaz, right? You want to see Nate Diaz, War Diaz, yada, yada, yada. Big freaking deal. Well, Khamzat wasn't interested in that fight, really. Because what does it do for him? Nothing. Nate Diaz wasn't ranked. So then he goes out there and beats Nate Diaz. What's everyone going to say? Oh, you haven't beat a ranked fighter. So he wasn't even motivated for that fight. But guess what? When it came time to fight and he had to fight Kevin Holland on short notice, what did he do? He finished him by submission in less than 2 minutes. And before that, he beat Li Jingliang by submission in about 2.5, 3 minutes. Okay, he struggled with Burns getting down in weight. Okay, he struggled with Usman because he hurt his hand in the first round. I know these are excuses, but it's also reality. This is what happened. I'm telling you now, Khamzat beats everybody on the planet from welterweight up to light heavyweight. Yeah, I said it. Light heavyweight. This man will destroy Alex Pereira right now. He would destroy Dricus du Plessis. And if he could make weight, he would demolish Leon Edwards. If his last name was Pereira, he'd already have 3 belts. Only Pereira gets to come in the UFC and get an instant title shot after beating, 2 people. One of them was tough, though. Bruno Silva, I think it was, that he fought. That man's tough. But he didn't do enough to earn a title shot. It's just the fact that he had history with Adesanya that got him the title shot. And guess what? To Pereira's credit, he took advantage of it. He won the fight. And he got himself a title. And then once you get yourself a title, you can basically defend it. You can move up and fight for the title. You have a lot of options once you get that title. But it's hard to get the first one. And you see what the UFC is doing to Khamzat. And I shouldn't totally blame the UFC because Khamzat's had his problems too. He's injured. He was sick. Then back in the day, he suffered with the vid for a while, so he had a lot of things going on. That's not necessarily the UFC's fault, and the UFC worked with him for a time until he missed weight. Until he missed weight. And I'm going to keep saying this about Khamzat, that he's the best fighter on the planet, because when he wins, I want y'all to know that I said it from the beginning. And if he loses, I got no problem coming on here and say, hey, I was wrong. But I don't think he's going to lose. So I have no reason, like McGregor would say, I want to apologize to absolutely nobody. Because the man has not lost yet. And some of y'all may be mad. Some of y'all may be upset and frustrated because he didn't make weight and you're a Nate Diaz fan. Get over it. Get over it. He's the best man on the planet, I'm trying to tell you. John Jones is up there too. You look at our due list. We got Khamzat, John Jones, Islam Makhachev, right? Leon Edwards is up in there. We still got Charles Oliveira up in there until he loses. You think Charles Oliveira is a joke because he lost to Islam and like it's over? He went in there and smashed, what was it, Dariush or whoever? Beat a good opponent. Okay? We got one person weighing in saying Khamzat barely won to Usman. He dominated Usman. The biggest talk of the fight going in is that Usman has 98% takedown defense, so Khamzat is not taking him down. That's Khamzat could take anyone down and submit him. He's not gonna take down Usman. He had him controlled for 4.5 minutes in the first round. Then looked completely different in the rest of the fight. So everyone's already thinking, oh my gosh, he got tired. He has no endurance. No, the man smashed his hand up hitting Usman. This man hurt his hand punching Usman, okay? Or maybe he hurt it some other way, but the man hurt his hand. He looked like a different fighter in rounds 2 and 3. If not, he goes on to control Usman probably for 11 or 12 minutes in dominating fashion and wins an easy unanimous decision if he doesn't hurt his hand. That's how the fight was trending. Bottom line. So he looked like a different fighter because he hurt his hand. Then you got others saying about Khamzat, oh, he hasn't fought hardly any middleweights. He had 3 middleweight fights. I think Rice McGee was at middleweight. Gerald Mearshart he smashed in 17 seconds. Right? And you're like, oh, who's Gerald Mearshart? He's not a good fighter. My man won 4 of the next 5 fights after the Khamzat fight. Then he smashes Usman in round 1. Looks like he's clearly going to run to an easy decision. Maybe he doesn't get the submission because Usman is great on the ground and in defense. But he would have took him down at will, and nobody does that to Usman. I mean, nobody. Nobody does that to Kamaru Usman. But Khamzat did it in the first round. I think he took down Usman for longer than Usman has been taken down in his entire career up to that point. And I'm not even sure that Usman was ever taken down other than maybe Leon Edwards up to that point. So you can look at rounds 2 and 3 and make an argument, but you can't hide from the fact that he hurt his hand, and that's the only reason the fight changed. And guess what? This man fighting with basically one arm. You go back and watch the video, he's throwing jabs and stuff. He doesn't have that power in the other hand. He beat Usman with one arm. Okay? So when you consider that, then yeah, you got to look at it like that. You got to look at it like, man, he beat Usman with one arm. Matthew Edge says, do you like football? I love football, man. Grew up playing football, right? High school, college, all that. Coached football for several years. Trying to get back into it, which is only going to make my life very busy. But it's just a matter of time. But yeah, man, I love football. And go Kansas City Chiefs. Taylor Swift, baby, all day. Hey, my Dolphins are out, so I'm rolling with Taylor Swift. Mainly because it makes my fiance get crazy. Every time I say, look, Taylor Swift's on TV, she gets mad, red in the face. So I'm kind of rooting for them because it pisses my fiance off. Because it's basically, she feels like a man's sport has been taken over by women. I love it, man. I love it. Khamzat is a joke. He literally told John Jones, see you soon. Yeah. Let Khamzat put on 20 pounds and we'll see what happens with John Jones. See, the ultimate factor you got to realize with Khamzat against anybody is the takedown ability. He is dominant on the ground. The only fight he wasn't dominant on the ground was against Gilbert Burns, and that's because he was light as can be. That's the only reason he wasn't dominant on the ground against Burns. Because Burns is a big welterweight. Khamzat's barely squeezing down. He's not very strong. That's the only reason that fight was even close. So yeah, Khamzat smashes everybody. In the welterweight division, yes, but definitely in the middleweight and light heavyweight division. If they said right now, Khamzat versus Pereira at, let's just make UFC 302, and you give Khamzat 4 months to get ready for Pereira, he'll smash Pereira. Absolutely destroy him. That kickboxing will not work on Khamzat. Because while you're doing all that kickboxing, he's just running through you like a freaking linebacker. He's going to get you to the ground, and that's it. And against average fighters, he's just going to go for the KO as quick as possible. So, again, I keep saying this so that you guys know, and you can't come back in here and say, hey, I'm a fair weather fan, and all of a sudden you won the title, and now I'm... No, man. We've been doing videos for multiple years telling you the same thing. And outraged every time that we got to sit for 6, 8, 10 months waiting for another fight for Khamzat. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. So Khamzat is on hold. He's pissed. Conor McGregor is pissed. These are probably two of the biggest names in the sport right now outside of Sean Strickland, who's in the top 3 for sure. But those 3 guys are going to sell. And to have Khamzat and Conor just waiting is ridiculous. I mean, when Conor beat Cowboy Cerrone, he wanted to fight like 3 months later. The UFC dragged their feet. Then when he was ready to go, boom, the pandemic hit. And then he couldn't fight for another 6. I mean, they made him wait a year after beating Cerrone in 40 seconds. There's guys right now, like Themba Gorimbo this past weekend, that he won in like 30 seconds. Guess what? He's going to want to be fighting as soon as possible. And the UFC is going to make it happen because it's to their benefit. It's not always what's best for the fighter. It's what's the benefit of the UFC. Khamzat wants Dana White privilege. Yeah. Khamzat doesn't deserve a title shot at welterweight, middleweight, and light heavyweight. Did Pereira deserve a title shot? Beating Bruno Silva? Did Pereira deserve a title shot? It's no longer, and listen, I understand what you're saying. In a regular world, yeah, he shouldn't be fighting for the title. But the bottom line is other guys got opportunities. There's a lot of people like me that believe Khamzat runs through the champion. So set the fight up. Let's get it over with. Shut guys like me up, and let's make it happen. Let's make it happen. Because if he loses, then I got to shut up. I mean, I probably won't, be honest. I'll probably tell you he's going to win the next time. But at the end, but in all seriousness, yeah, he'd have a loss on his record. It would be blemished, and Khamzat would then have to go back and wait probably a year or 2 years and beat some guys to get back in line for a second title shot if he did lose. But he won't lose. He's going to win. And someone asked me a minute ago if I like football. Yeah, like when the Dolphins play, my blood pressure is through the freaking roof. Doesn't matter if it's the first game of the season or the playoffs or whatever. Khamzat and McGregor are the only, and Adesanya sometimes, especially a few years back, are the only guys that when they're walking out to the octagon, I feel like it's the Miami Dolphins. That's the best way. I'm nervous. I got the chills. Feel like my hands are shaking. My blood pressure is up. It's like I want them to win just as bad as I want to see the Miami Dolphins win. And I use this on Miami Dolphins because I'm a huge football fan. And when the Dolphins lose, like the rest of the week is screwed up until they play again. And when they lose to the Chiefs in the playoffs, now I got to wait 8 months. So, it's not a good thing. And that's how I feel about Khamzat, McGregor, and a lot of times Adesanya. But Khamzat beats everybody. Please believe it. Please believe it. Now I'll leave you with this. Before we get off here, got to go to a meeting. I'm sitting here in the parking lot waiting for an hour because no point in going home. But we got our first copyright strike, man. Absolutely crazy. Just 2 days ago, first copyright strike. And you're not going to freaking believe this, man. You're not going to believe this. So YouTube has a new feature of which you can remix short videos, right? So if the UFC, for example, makes a video eligible, I can look at the video and click the remix, and I can use a 5-second clip of that video. And I can comment after it. So I can use a 5-second fight clip, right? So the YouTube has been promoting this. They send out emails. They put it in your feed, and hey, check out the remix feature. Other creators are allowing you to use their content, a small portion of it, and then you can comment on it. And I'm like, I didn't mess with it for 6 months. Finally, I started messing with it because it kept sending promotional stuff out there. So it leads you to believe that, okay, if the video creator or the channel says, hey, that you can remix this video. If not, you can't. The remix button doesn't work because the video is not eligible by the creator. So every time there's a remix, boom, you hit the remix. You can clip it for 5 seconds, comment on it, and then YouTube sends me a copyright strike for using something that they promoted for me to use. So I took a clip of a UFC fight that UFC put on YouTube and then allowed you to remix it. So I remixed it. 5 second clip, boom, I get a copyright strike. I write YouTube and I say, hey, what's going on here? Like, you're making us feel like that if the remix is available, it can be used. Oh, we know how frustrated you are. Well, you're dang right I'm frustrated because I've been lied to. I've been lied to. I've been told that if the remix feature is available, it can be used and I get a copyright. It's just like this. It's like real simple. If you work at like Wendy's, it's a basic place. Wendy's has an employee, they can't count change. The boss, the manager says, hey, you can use the cash register and computer. Take the 20, put it in the computer. It'll tell you, hey, you got to give $99.25 to the customer, right? So Wendy says, hey, you can use this cash register and computer for the change because you can't count it, whatever. Then the next customer comes up, they give you a 20, boom. The computer says, hey, 925 change. You give the customer 925 change. And your boss runs up and says, hey, you're suspended. You're suspended for using the cash register. It's like, dude, I'm only using what you told me and made available for me to use and actually promoted me to use it. So I'm highly upset today. I've been so mad since yesterday getting a copyright strike for the first time. Like, I've always made my own content. I'm very leery about using anyone else's videos. I see people do it all the time. But usually if I ever have tried it, boom, copyright strike, not messing with it. But YouTube made it sound like it was safe to use this feature. And then I used it because the UFC made a video of it. And you know how much I love the UFC? But they made a video available and said, hey, you can remix it. Then a third party comes in and slaps a copyright strike on me, but the UFC don't get in trouble. So the UFC is using video as a sub license and making it available for me and other creators to use. Then when we use it, then we get hit with a copyright strike. It's like, it's crazy, man. It's absolutely, and I don't even talk about stuff like that, like this that often, but I feel used by the company. I mean, it's terrible. Flat Guy, something like that says you're always going to get a copyright strike on a UFC clip. And I agree 100%. I know better. I'm not going to download a UFC video, cut it up and post it. It's coming down eventually. Even though some guys have been doing it for years and nothing happens to them, and that's cool. I would never do that. But YouTube said if the remix feature is available, that means the person who uploaded the video made that video available to be used for just 5 seconds because it helps promote them as well. So YouTube made the creator feel comfortable with using this short 5 second clip from other creators if it's made available. So if the UFC don't want you using their clip, all they have to do is make the remix feature unavailable. It pops up on every video you upload. So it's like UFC made the clip available, and then when you use it, says, oh, copyright. It's like, it's crazy, man. It's YouTube. I'm just cautioning you guys, if any of you are creators out there, to be very careful with this remix feature, because some videos, it allows you to remix, and these are for shorts. It allows you to remix, but then they'll come back later and say, you're using copyright video. So it's like they're tricking you, man. They're tricking you. Bo Jackson says, you picked a Mavov and Roman Dolce and claim victory. Can't value your picks anymore. You fell off. No, man, look at our record last year. We have definitely not fallen off. We're off to a rough start this year. And I totally agree with you. So what happens is when I'm doing the picks, I do the main event right away at the beginning. Like, the main event is done like 10 days before the fight. Okay. Then I do the other last week, 12, 13 fights. All right. 99% of the time, I remember who the main event pick was. So when I'm going back and doing all my picks for the week, I'm going through and listening to the video and writing the name down of people that I'm picking because I don't remember. I do it on the fly. Like I do the pick on the fly. And I just assumed I had Roman Dolise winning. Even in the podcast, I said that, even though the prediction just played right before that. But what always holds true is whatever I say in the prediction, that's the prediction. Okay? We made very few mistakes in about 3,000 fight predictions now. This has probably happened once or twice. I can't remember another time, so I'm going to say twice just to be safe. But when I went back and listened to the clip, to the prediction, I had a Mavov winning. I couldn't believe it. So we're 3-0. We got to take it, man. I mean, we're 20-15 in all fights right now. It's not great at all. It's freaking terrible. It's like 55%, right? But 3-0 in the main event, we got to take that. Looks like Mylan says Pereira Aspinall main event UFC 300. Yeah, I could see that. And that's what I said. You got to have Pereira, Adesanya, Khamzat, or Conor. If you don't have one of those four, there's others, but they're already fighting or like Islam's unavailable. You got to have one of those four. It's real simple. If you don't have one of those four, the whole freaking thing falls apart, even though it's great. Bo Jackson said, all week he said how Dolise was going to destroy, and he came on and said, oh yeah, I had a Mavov, you picked both guys. Yeah, so what happened is I did the prediction and predicted a Mavov to win. And then it's done at that point. It's 100% solid, okay? When I did the podcast, sometimes when the prediction is playing, I'm not necessarily listening to it. I'm taking a break, I'm drinking some coffee, I'm messing with the dog for a second because I got 4 minutes. I come back at the end of the clip, boom, I start talking. This week I made a mistake on the podcast. And once I made the mistake, in my mind, I had picked Roman. But even if I had picked Roman and he won, and I went back and listened to the real the prediction, I would have then counted it as a loss anyway. You see what I'm saying? Like I'm not gonna go back and forth. This is just one time that I made a mistake, and y'all have the right to get on me. I mean, when you make a mistake, people got to get on you, and you just got to eat it. You know what I'm saying? So I ate it this week. But hey, at the end of the day, we're 3-0, man. And thank God I wasn't rooting for a Mavov because I would have been pissed about the point deduction, bro. I would have been freaking mad about that point deduction. But listen, I got to get off here and get to this meeting, man. It's been real. Haven't done a mobile live stream in a while. We got to do more. I got to find the time. It's hard to find the time, but we're going to find it. Appreciate y'all jumping into the chat. It's your boy Chris Cross. This is a TCMMA podcast. As always, have a great day and God bless. Peace.